Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro denounced the United States foreign policy in the region, describing it as a violation of international law and an attack against all of humanity. Cuba received the second shipment of humanitarian aid from Venezuela to help deal with the damage caused by Hurricane Melissa. And the first winter storm in the Gaza Strip has flooded the camps of displaced Palestinians as they struggle against the critical increasing shortage of houses. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro denounced the United States foreign policy in the region, describing it as a violation of international law and an attack against all humanity. The Venezuelan leader attributed this offensive to extremist right-wing forces in power in Washington. He denounced the resurgence of imperialist and colonialist sentiments that despise the lives of peoples, the head of state, emphasized that the aggression is not only against his government or against Venezuela, but that it is an offensive directed against all of Latin America and the Caribbean, and ultimately against humanity. With this denunciation, Venezuela seeks to alert the international community to what it considers an existential threat to the public law system and peaceful coexistence among nations. During his speech at the International Jurist Conference, Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro called the peoples of Latin America and the Caribbean to unite in the struggle against what he described as the empire of the evil.
We have to cultivate the consciousness and the permanent rebelliousness of the people and of everyone. If we all rebel against the empire of evil and the Nazis, who can take us? We Christians have a saying that says that if God is with us, who is against us? And I am a revolutionary, and I say that if all of the conscious people of this Americas rebelled against imperialism and its attempt of bringing a war, who can take us?
The President of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, received religious leaders from across the country on Friday in the Simón Bolívar Hall of the Miraflores complex as part of a prayer meeting for peace in the country. The event was attended by important figures such as Nicolás Ernesto Maduro Guerra, Deputy to the National Assembly, and Vice President of Religious Affairs of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, Nahum Fernandez, head of the Caracas government, and Apostle Dan Suarez, president of the National Ministerial Table. During the meeting, participants expressed their good wishes for peace in the nation and stated that Venezuela is a sacred territory that enjoys the leadership of a man such as the national president. And the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of America People's Trade Treaty denounced the aggressive escalation of the United States against Venezuela. In a statement, the organization denounced that the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of America categorically condemned the recent offensive escalation of hostile and provocative statements issued by spokespeople for the United States government against the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. These are discredited figures without moral authority who resort to ridiculous falsehoods and pretexts in an attempt to create a scenario that our peoples already know all too well. Also, the ALBA TCP ruled. The alliance clearly warns, if the United States dares to take the leap from psychological and media operations to a reckless military movement of aggression against Venezuela, the entire Caribbean would enter into unprecedented destabilization. No power must threat regional peace or underestimate the conscience of our peoples. Finally, it reiterated, the Bolivarian Alliance reaffirms its full support for the people and government of Venezuela and condemns this new media aggression and the misinformation campaign, which only reflects the political decline of those who promote it. Our peoples will not be fooled by empty threats or despicable rhetoric. And Cuba received the second shipment of humanitarian aid from Venezuela to help deal with the severe damage caused by Hurricane Melissa in the eastern region of the island. According to the director of the Guillermo Moncada port, the unloading of donations, including supplies, food, and materials to support the recovery of the electrical system, began on Friday afternoon. In this regard, the Director of Foreign Trade and Foreign Investment in Santiago de Cuba announced that the Defense Council will be responsible for distributing aid in the eastern provinces. In addition, the authorities also informed that the first ship sent with Venezuelan aid to Cuba has returned to Bolivarian territory after unloading tons of supplies. And Venezuela provides skilled labor for the rehabilitation of road and bridge infrastructure affected by Hurricane Melissa. The Venezuelan technical mission arrived in the province of Santiago de Cuba, comprising civil engineers, bridge and road experts, and a group of workers from the electricity sector, whose experience is essential for restoring basic services. The brigade of more than 20 professionals was received by Cuban authorities at the Antonio Maceo Grajales International Airport in the city. This gesture of solidarity reaffirms the strategic and fraternal nature of relations between Cuba and Venezuela, based on mutual cooperation and the exchange of knowledge. In this scenario, Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel expressed his gratitude to Venezuela for the humanitarian aid provided to support recovery efforts after Hurricane Melissa.
And Aileen, I also want to highlight the meeting I had before joining the round table and the meeting with the Provincial Defense Council that we experienced, which was sharing with a team of constructors from the sister Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, which was sent by our brother President Maduro, led by a deputy minister, and which has worked together with our troops and the Ministry of Construction and Transportation to conduct a survey of the state of the roads. An assessment of the state of the roads and work is already underway on projects to recover, with the joint participation of Venezuelans and Cubans. A group of damaged areas here in Santiago de Cuba, and that is where the true expression of the brotherhood and solidarity of two revolutions lies. A country under the threat of invasion does not forget its brothers, and here it is also collaborating. I believe that from here we must be grateful for the continuous and timely solidarity of the brotherly people of Venezuela and also of its leadership, in particular our brother President Nicolás Maduro.
And now we have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In Brazil, dozens of indigenous people blocked the entrance to the COP30 summit headquarters, demanding that the Brazilian government halt the expansion of development projects in the Amazon and protect the forest. The peaceful protest denounced mining, deforestation, oil exploration, and the construction of a new railway in the Amazonian region. The demonstration was led by the Munduruku people who live in areas affected by extractivism. The protesters blocked the entrance to the Blue Zone, where the COP30 negotiations are taking place, and demanded a meeting with Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. In this scenario, security was reinforced and delegates were forced to use a side entrance to continue their negotiations at the climate summit. And at an alternative event to COP30 called the People's Summit, hundreds of indigenous people and social movements activists from around the world are creating a list of demands which they will present to the United Nations tomorrow. Our reporter Brian Meir explains.
Day 5 of COP30, the UN Climate Summit, is coming to a close. But at the Federal University of Pará, there's still a lot of activities going on. This is where the People's Summit is taking place. It's a parallel event representing an alternative viewpoint with participation of around 30,000 people who've traveled from all over the world to participate, representing indigenous groups, agrarian reform movements, Quilombola residents, and riverine peoples, many of whom traveled here by boat. And today they're holding a popular assembly in which they're collectively creating a series of demands that they're going to hand over to the head of the United Nations delegation tomorrow morning. Now, they're still working out the details, but some of his demands include an immediate transition to renewable energy sources led by the countries in the global north who are the most responsible for the climate crisis. They're also calling for punishment for all of the environmental damage caused by multinational corporations in the global south. There's also a call to try and limit or eliminate the use of poisonous pesticides such as glyphosate, which was legalized in Brazil after the 2016 coup. So it'll be interesting to see how they're received by the United Nations tomorrow. In the meantime, this has proven to be a valuable space for like-minded social movements and activists to exchange experiences and make plans together.
In other topics, but also staying in Brazil, Sao Paulo, an explosion occurred at an illegal fireworks storage facility east of the city. The accident took place in the Tatuapé neighborhood with at least one fatality and nearly 10 injured. Fire departments, police, and emergency services reported that the explosion caused residential buildings to collapse and vehicles were also damaged, leading to the temporary closure of roads. Authorities indicate that the stored fireworks were intended for manufacturing of balloons, and an investigation has been launched to determine the causes of the incident. The Supreme Federal Court of Brazil will examine a complaint against Federal Deputy Eduardo Bolsonaro, son of former President Jair Bolsonaro, for the crime of judicial coercion. The charges were brought by the Federal Public Prosecutor's Office, which accused Bolsonaro of seeking foreign sanctions on the nation and its authorities in order to prevent the conviction of his father. The formal proceedings will be conducted through a virtual plenary session and will last until November 25th. If the court accepts the charges, Eduardo Bolsonaro, who has been in the United States since February, will be indicted and a criminal case will be opened against him. In other information, on Thursday in Mexico, President Claudia Sheinbaum reiterated that the Generation C march called for this Saturday is linked to and financed by right-wing and foreign groups in an attempt to destabilize the country. The head of state recalled the report by Infodemic coordinator Miguel Elorza, in which he highlighted that the call to action is a digital strategy promoted by 8 million bots, influencers, and politicians linked to the opposition. The use of artificial intelligence videos was also detected, including the dissemination of images of the National Palace on fire. In addition, Sheinbaum urged the population and young people to be informed and to know where these types of calls come from so that they do not allow themselves to be used, and she assured that she respects the right to protest.
Regarding the demonstration, Mexico is a free country. We recognize the right to protest. Anyone who wants to protest can do so. We always encourage that the demonstrations be carried out peacefully, without any act of violence. Yesterday, our colleague Miguel Elorza presented a very thorough investigation into how this march was organized, which is important for all those who are going to attend, so that they know how the call was generated on social media. And also that besides the fact that a few young people might have legitimately protested, it was the opposition that really got this march going, the PRI, the PAN, and personalities linked to the mess.
And the U.S. House Oversight Committee released the 23,000 pages of documents from the state of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, putting new political pressure on President Trump. According to some of the documents, Epstein apparently served as a behind-the-scenes advisor to the former Trump official and MAGA influencer Steve Bannon during a 2018 media campaign to defend Trump. An email was also published in which Epstein told co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell that Trump had spent hours at his home with one of his victims. The president claims that the correspondence is part of what he calls an ongoing hoax around Epstein and a deflection from Democrats' performance during the government shutdown. On the other hand, Trump ordered Attorney General Pam Bondi and the FBI to investigate Epstein's relations with former President Bill Clinton and many other people and institutions. And on Thursday, the United States announced the inclusion of 4 left-wing groups from Germany, Italy and Greece on its list of terrorist organizations. The Donald Trump administration presented the measure as part of its supposed fight against extremism. According to the State Department, the targeted groups are Antifa Ost in Germany, the informal anarchist Federation International Revolutionary Front that primarily operates in Italy, and the Greek organizations Armed Proletarian Justice and Revolutionary Class Self-Defense. With these terrorist designations, the United States is using its security mechanisms to criminalize anti-fascist movements that oppose ultra-conservative views and policies promoted by Washington. And we have a second show break coming up. Before, we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. For a show break, we'll be right back. Welcome back to From the South. The first winter storm in the Gaza Strip has flooded the camps of displaced Palestinians as they struggle against a critical increase in shortage of houses. According to the Gaza Human Rights Center, almost 2 million Palestinians are facing a growing humanitarian crisis in which only 23% of winter shelter needs have been met. The center also called on the international community and humanitarian organizations to take urgent action and provide safe tents, blankets, and winter clothing in preparation for the arrival of winter. And Palestinian authorities warned that 900,000 displaced Gazans are facing a climate emergency in the coastal region of Rafah. The municipality of Khan Yunis warned that due to the inclement weather conditions, Gazans are taking shelter in improvised tents since their homes have been destroyed. It also warned that with the arrival of winter and the start of the rains, it is necessary to pressure the Zionist troops to allow the necessary equipment to enter and protect the lives of the displaced. During the 2-year genocide, Israel destroyed more than 90% of the urban infrastructure in the Gaza Strip. And also on Thursday, the Israeli army killed 2 15-year-old Palestinian teenagers near the West Bank city of Hebron on the outskirts of the Karmeit Sur settlement. The Palestinian government's General Civil Affairs Authority identified the young men as Bilal Rabah Ali Baran and Muhammad Mahmoud Abba Ajaz. In a statement, authorities denounced the retention of their bodies and said they died from bullets fired by the occupation near Beit Umar. The Israeli genocidal regime defended the action, stating that it is military ambushed them to eliminate 2 terrorists who were on their way to perpetrate an attack without providing additional details about the identity of the deceased. The resistance movement Hamas confirmed that the attack on children in the West Bank constitutes an atrocious crime perpetrated by a terrorist government. And the Israeli government approved projects to build more than 26,000 homes in the occupied West Bank as part of its expansionist plans in Palestinian territory. The Applied Research Institute Jerusalem stated that the works are part of 194 projects covering a total of more than 3,000 hectares concentrated in the Jerusalem district. In this regard, the institute emphasized that according to the United Nations, settlements in the Palestinian territories constitute a violation of international law and have no legal validity. However, Israel continues its policies of displacement and demolition of Palestinian homes, which undermines the possibility of establishing a state and implementing peace agreements. In other informations, in the United Kingdom, thousands of residents' doctors have begun a 5-day strike across England on Friday to demand better wages. The action, which is the 13th walkout by doctors since March 2023, seeks to put further pressure on government institutions as Health Secretary Wes Streeting has refused to budge on demands for a pay uplift. For its part, the British Medical Association defended the strike, arguing that doctors need a 26% pay increase to restore their earnings once inflation is taken into account. Moreover, the association's chair assured that the dispute is rooted deeper in years of pay erosion that have left resident doctors far behind other public sector workers.
More doctors than in the last decade last year decided that they wanted to leave the NHS, and we think that valuing them in a fair way and ensuring that they can get employment and training is a realistic and a reasonable ask for the government. The government have not came forward with any reasonable proposal on either front, and that's why we've been forced back onto the picket lines today.
Well, we don't want to be out here on strike, but what we're saying is that we need to increase the number of doctors. The 12-hour waits we're seeing in A&E are happening without the strikes. And if we don't increase the number of training posts and increase the number of jobs for doctors, that's going to continue to get worse.
And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok as well. For Telesur English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.